Hello, Farming Secrets community, and welcome to another Let's Talk Soil session. I'm joined by Sam Duncan. Hello, Sam. How you doing?
Hey Ray, how are you?
I'm very good as always. And how's our farm labs going?
Yeah, very well, very well. As you can see, I'm in something called an airport. We've just had to come down to Sydney to do a bit of work for the last couple of days, and flying back to lovely Armidale in about half an hour. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back out to the country. It's yeah.
Excellent. I envy your ability to fly around being in Melbourne, but I'm glad to know that the airports are still working. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the business you work for.
Sure. So I'm the founder of a business called FarmLab. So what we're about helping farmers understand their soil and the changes over time by giving them kind of what we call a bank account for your soil. So somewhere to put your soil test results so that you can see the changes over time, and you can start to understand what's going on, linking your management practices or linking your farm management practices back to what's happening to your soil. So we work a lot with soil testing labs. Currently working with 3 here in Australia: EAL, APEL, and AgVita down in Tasmania now, to help streamline the soil testing process. And so if you do any soil testing through them, you can opt to have your results come back through us, and you'll see them appear against your farm. And then you can use that to look at the changes over time.
I love the analogy you always have. Every time we have a chat, I feel like there's a new analogy, and now this bank account for storing your soil tests. I love it. It makes so much sense.
The other analogy for your listeners that we cycle through is, a soil test is like a blood test, and we do equate it like, and I'm sure that'll come up later on in our conversation as well, Ray. Analogies are a really great way to understand something we know very little about, because soil is just so, it's another world. It really still is another world. I think we know more about space and our solar system and our galaxy than we do about the soil beneath our feet. It's
Absolutely.
Quite phenomenal.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what a harsh reality that is, that we probably do know a lot more about Mars than what we do about Earth, soil, and its biology. And I love the innovation that's happening in this space, and love that people have this bank account that they can store their results in. But speaking about soil, what does soil mean to you personally?
I find soil is just incredibly fundamental to life, to climate, to the environment. For me, it is a bit of a mystery. I think everything that I've done around soil has been to try and understand it, or try and help people understand it better, because we certainly are just scratching the surface of everything in it. We've started to understand, and I think that what we know about soil historically has kind of gone from, it's just something on the ground that we grow plants from, from the dawn of modern civilization, sort of 10, 12,000 years ago, to now understanding there's chemicals in soil, and the soil has its chemistry, to now going into the soil biome space, and then the fundamentals that exist below all of these new paradigms. And so soil is just really kind of living. And I'm going to steal this term. I was talking to a farmer about it last Friday, and he described it as this living soil, this living thing. And it's so true. You do one thing to it one year, and you get these repercussions over the following years that are just very hard to explain, or very, unless it was alive and there was something going on, they sort of don't make sense. Things change, things grow. You've got the microbiome now, as I said, and it's a phenomenal sort of piece. So, when it comes to farming, again, to me, it's because it's a living sort of system. It's really the basis for everything we do across agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right. And it is so hard once you get an understanding, you can't not see soil as a living thing. But getting to that point is very difficult, because we associate living, like pets, animals, babies, humans, that's a living form, and it has, a heartbeat and, and a brain and things like that. But then soil has so much activity and so many microscopic living things that as a whole, it is actually a living organism on our planet, and we just treat it like dirt.
And exactly. So perhaps it's because we're silly humans, we kind of don't, we see the results of soil. We think, all right, well, soil's just there. You know, I can see plants grow, so plants are alive because they're growing up. We don't see what's happening underneath the surface because we can't. And, you know, it's almost as, you know, seeing is believing because we can't see it. We just think it's this, you know, this dead thing where, you know, that might store something, but never sort of changes. But in reality, it does. And, you know, it's changing all the time. There are, you know, there are processes going on, and it is just, it is just a phenomenal thing, soil. It's,
I love it.
it's very interesting.
So what got you so interested in soil? Like, where did this soil journey come from?
For me personally, many of your viewers have probably seen the TED Talk by Alan Savory or heard of Alan Savory and the Savory Institute. And seeing his talk back in sort of 2013, 2014, I think it was, really sort of opened something up. I was, you know, thinking a lot about climate change in particular and, you know, how to mitigate it. There's all these fantastic solutions out there to reduce emissions, for example. But what are we doing to put CO2 back into the ground, put carbon in the ground? And the idea of using soil, that we could use soil to do that, and that we could do so in line with our existing agricultural paradigm, was just such an interesting concept to me. So that was back in 2013. I was serving full-time in the Air Force back then, and I was just fascinated by it. So I did a bunch of research. My experience in the Air Force was as a logistics officer, so nothing to do with the environment or soil at all. So it was really just just started off as this sort of side hobby. I was just super interested, and then that grew, and I started looking at what I could do and how I could contribute to the world of agriculture and sustainable agriculture in particular. I knew it had something to do with soil. I'd sort of had a background, my experience had been in technology in the Air Force. So I sort of looked at all of that, and I thought, all right, well, what is it that I love? Well, I love data. Unfortunately, don't go to sleep if you're listening to this now. But I knew there was a data problem when it came to soil carbon, especially in that we knew we could improve soil carbon. We knew it had great impacts, but knowing how to improve it, or being sure of that, and seeing the changes over time was something that was still is a really hard thing to do. You know, it's not as easy as measuring CO2 in the atmosphere, which, you know, is moving around, cycling around all the time. Very, very quickly, you can send up a weather balloon and take a sample, and scientists, you know, do this quite often, to look at the amount of CO2, the parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. You can't do that in soil because, well, you can, but soil doesn't, CO2 or carbon in the soil in one spot doesn't move, you know, across to another spot. So it's hard to understand when things are changing. And so there's this whole big sort of data piece that I thought we could solve using technology. And that's sort of what got me more into the space. And it's kind of where we've gone today with the bank account for the soil, for soil, and, you know, through giving farmers access to their soil information and to soil carbon information in particular. Love
that. And I was so excited about spreadsheets and charts, and
Good.
I'll have to leave that for next time.
I'm glad I'm not alone, Ray. That's really good to hear. Yeah.
I've always warmed to your platform because, you know, I've come from marketing, and I'm also that tech analytical guy, even though I don't sit a lot in it. But I think, you know, coming from that business startup world, I see so many similarities in the farming ag world. Like, they are businesses, and I know that, you know, you love to measure it, and what you can't, you know, what you don't measure, you can't manage. And that's probably something that's, you know, very big in the marketing world. And I know that's near and dear for you as well. Your platform enables people to measure things. How does that kind of work? What are some of the breakthroughs that some of your clients have been able to get by measuring and tracking and managing?
One of the things that I think we get a lot of feedback on is just the ability to see the changes, to visualize the changes. Like, it's really simple. Most people have got soil test results back and sort of see those in a spreadsheet, but to map them out on a paddock, or to see where they sit in relation to a paddock, or in relation to, you know, their biomass, for example, and their crop growth, is just it's a really simple thing. It's just locating it. It's where was that sample taken? What does that mean for this paddock, or this carbon for this paddock is this? It's putting that, applying, putting some of that. The biggest thing there is just applying, taking it out of a spreadsheet and putting it onto a map so that people can see it. Has been, really, I think one of the biggest things we get, the biggest pieces of feedback we get, positive feedback we get. Yeah.
Lovely. I love a good pun. Let's just say it was groundbreaking.
It was groundbreaking.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I think you make a really good point, because farmers are visual and kinesthetic type of learners. They look at the crop, they're getting their hands dirty, and so the app and the data that you collect can be put into a visualization format. And I think it's really cool to go, be very experimental and say, this year on this paddock we did X, and on this paddock we did Y, and these are the visual differences, and you can measure that and track that. And I think that's a really cool way of investing your time and effort in a way that's very proactive. And then that, because 3 years down the track, you might forget what you did on that paddock. You can load up the data and go, oh, interesting, we put 20 head of cow on that paddock, and now we're seeing the results of that 3 years later.
And that's been the really challenging thing, for farmers to do, is to sort of equate that. All right, I've managed this paddock, I've grazed it intensively, or I've applied these treatments to it. What is the outcome of that? And we've been able to see that outcome visually, quite often. And that's really how we've done our analysis, is that evidence-based approach. But we know when it comes to soil carbon, especially, that you may be getting improvements in fertility at the top sort of 10 centimeters, which may not be having an impact to soil carbon below 15, 30 centimeters. And so putting these pieces of the puzzle together has been really it's been really important to then help understand what's really helping to increase soil carbon. And it's different, soil carbon changes with climate. So if you have dry years, you're probably not going to get the same increases as wet years, because really it's the roots that are the sort of carbon pump, right? They're all the plants that are the carbon pump, but really it's the roots that are doing all the work. And so unless your roots are growing, you're not storing carbon. And so really piecing all these together, and you're right, farmers are very visual people, and they like to see evidence. And a lot of the farmers we work with are very factual people. They love that. They love seeing that evidence, and they love equating that to what they know they did the previous season. So looking at changes in carbon, changes and other things as well. Biology test, which I mentioned before, it's kind of really new, sort of cutting edge. We're just starting to understand the impact that soil biome is playing on soil fertility and soil carbon in particular. And so, understanding that and mapping that sort of gives, is giving farmers a bit of an edge in terms of knowing, or at least experimenting with ways to improve it. And I think that's really cool. I think, farmers are innovators, traditionally have always been innovators, have had to innovate. And so we're just there to give them better tools to do so, to make, to come up with those new inventions and new innovations to improve their soil.
Awesome. I couldn't agree more. And I know you've got a flight to catch, but one more thing that I'd love you to just cover off is, with someone like yourself who's been around soil and looked at a lot of different profiles, what's a telltale sign of healthy soil? What is something that you can kind of do, look, touch, feel, smell, and go, that's healthier soil?
That's a good question, right? So look, I think there's, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to say it's not necessarily about how healthy your soil is now. It's about how you're treating it now. So it's kind of, okay, let's go to the health analogy. You knew I was going to go there, Ray. But let's take a person who doesn't eat well. I guess you can tell they're unhealthy if they're the problem sort of on the surface. Really, I think the real way you can sort of tell is probably more behavioural, because you may end up seeing, there might be a skinny person that is actually really unhealthy and is having, Big Macs for dinner every night and Red Bulls for breakfast every morning, right? So it's not necessarily about how it looks, and soil does look different everywhere you go. It's about how it's been treated, and do you have things, simple things like having ground cover, having diverse species to act as that ground cover of species of pasture and species of crops and all these other things, right? Not having monocultures. And it's probably, for me, it's probably more about how that soil is being treated rather than how it looks that determines how healthy and the potential for fertility of it. Because we do improve fertility, right? We do improve the health of our soil. So seeing unhealthy soil, you know, you might be able to see unhealthy soil. You might be able to test for unhealthy soil. The obvious one for us, which we see all the time, is low soil carbon levels, low soil organic matter levels, because that is kind of a real fundamental when it comes to soil fertility. We know if soil has high carbon or higher carbon content, or generally speaking, there's high potential for it to hold nutrients, and it's just what we'd call probably healthier. But really, for me, I guess I'll come back to it's how it's being treated. You know, making sure there's ground cover, making sure there's diverse species, making sure there's all these factors that are probably indicators that there's an active soil biome. There's lots of stuff going on in that living, breathing soil.
Love that. So what I hear you saying is that everything that's happening above the ground is affecting everything below the ground. And so seeing the way that people are treating their soil can tell a good story. Well, Sam, it's been absolutely a pleasure chatting with you about all things soil. How can people get to hang around with you and what you're doing a little bit more?
Touch base. We love to talk. We love just to talk to farmers about their experience in soil management. So get in touch at www.farmlab.com.au. Send us an email at info@farmlab.com.au. And don't be afraid to reach out, or get us on Twitter at @GetFarmLab. We love talking about soil, so definitely reach out.
Love that. And that's been evident every time I've bumped into you at a conference or seen you online or hang out with us. It's always definitely about soil, and I know carbon in the soil is a hot topic at the moment. But on that note, until next time, I know you've got a plane to catch to get off the ground, but everyone who's listening, it's time to get your hands in the dirt and understand your soil deeper. Until next time, happy farming.
Guys.